This is literally the craziest thing I've ever seen. He's innocent, he didn't do it, and now he's serving time off of something they didn't do.
We begin this morning with the mess surrounding Dr. Ronny Jackson's nomination to head the VA. Allegations of misconduct are now putting the spotlight on the nominee and the vetting process. So here's the question. Why didn't the White House know more about Jackson's record ahead of time? I have a great team here to help me break all of it down. But first, I want to explain where things stand, because this was supposed to be the day Ronny Jackson headed to Capitol Hill for his confirmation hearing. Instead, Jackson and the White House are in damage control mode amid allegations Jackson was abusive to his staff, improperly handed out prescription drugs, and was even drunk on the job. I have to say again, these are allegations. The latest word from the White House is that Jackson is not planning to withdraw his nomination. In fact, officials, they are doubling down, bringing the doctor in for face-to-face time with the president last night, during which the two agreed that Jackson would fight these accusations. The White House backed him up with this statement, quote, Dr. Jackson's record as a White House physician is impeccable. He has improved unit morale, received glowing reviews and promotions under Republican and Democrat presidents, and he has been given a clean vet from the FBI. Here's a question. It is not clear if that is enough to save Jackson. Senators say the VA committee said they have gotten similar stories from about 20 current and former military service members who worked alongside the nominee. Democratic Senator John Tester, who first revealed the allegations, told NBC they're troubling.
I think all these things, whether it's prescription drugs, doling them out, whether it's a toxic work environment, whether it's intoxication in the workplace, all play against that kind of positive leadership that the VA needs. All three of those are very, very harmful to somebody who's going to be a secretary and run an agency as big as the VA.
But the White House says previous reviews had found nothing out of the ordinary. And the administration even released personal notes from President Obama that praised Jackson for his work as White House doctor. It reads, quote, Ronny does a great job, genuine enthusiasm, poised under pressure, incredible work ethic, and follow-through. Ronny continues to inspire confidence with the care he provides to me, my family, and my team. The New York Times says more than half a dozen Obama administration officials also expressed their support. Jackson himself tried to help his case, meeting with Republican Senator Jerry Moran, who later said the doctor denied allegations of a hostile work environment and insisted he never had a drink while he was on duty. Jackson told our own Garrett Hake that he wants the opportunity to address these allegations publicly.
You've seen the allegations, a hostile work environment, allegations about potentially drinking on the job, over-prescribing medications. Are you saying those are categorically untrue?
I'm saying I'm looking forward to the hearing so we can sit down and I can explain everything to everyone and answer all the senators' questions.
But of course, there is a vetting process that is set up specifically to avoid situations like this. The president, however, opted to skip that process, leaving his own White House in the lurch. He then complicated things further yesterday.
I don't want to put a man through who's not a political person. I don't want to put a man through a process like this. It's too ugly and too disgusting. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. What does he need it for? To be abused by a bunch of politicians that aren't thinking nicely about our country? I really don't think personally he should do it, but it's totally his. I would stand behind him, totally his decision.
I get it. The president thinks he wouldn't want to do it. Ronny's being run through the ringer. He didn't have to. The White House could have done a complete vetting process here. When the Republican chairman of the VA committee, Johnny Isakson, was asked if Jackson can still be confirmed, the senator said, quote, we'll see. I want to go to the White House and NBC's Kristen Welker. Okay, Kristen, this is extraordinary here because Ronny Jackson was the White House doctor for the Obama administration, for President Trump. I've spoken to people inside the White House and from Obama's team who've said he's a great guy to work with. But is the issue here, he might be a good doctor, but he's not qualified to be the VA secretary, and the White House is now feeling the blowback?
Well, there are two components to that, Steph. First, these allegations. And as you just played that soundbite, his response to Garrett Haake, Ronny Jackson feels as though he has a right to defend himself and to essentially say these allegations are false. Now, I've been talking to White House officials who say they want him to have that chance. And I think what you're going to see in the coming hours and in the coming days is a more robust attempt from the White House to really defend Ronny Jackson and to roll out some of his credentials and try to put the focus on that. There's a sense that maybe there wasn't enough of that happening ahead of his confirmation hearing, which was supposed to get started today, Steph. Remember that. It's been postponed indefinitely. In terms of the qualifications, that is a separate issue. And I've been talking to veterans advocates who say, look, our concerns about Ronny Jackson go back to the day that he was nominated, the concern being that he's never managed a large agency. Veterans Affairs is the second largest government agency, Steph. So there are real concerns about that. And veterans advocates say, look, this uncertainty doesn't help them solve their problems within the VA. So they're frustrated by that. Now, I've been talking to former Obama administration officials as well who echo basically what you've been hearing. They don't have a bad word to say about Ronny Jackson. They say they never saw him drinking heavily or drinking on the job. And they say that some of these allegations are overblown, even suggesting that they may be an attempt to undercut him by political rivals. It was striking to hear President Trump essentially give Ronny Jackson a way out to lay the groundwork for that possibility. We know that the two men met yesterday in the Oval Office, a meeting that was described as positive. So in terms of the timing, one White House official telling me, look, they would expect the confirmation process to pick back up in mid-May. And again, Steph, I think you're going to see a very robust attempt to defend him between now and then. Steph.
All right, I want to bring my panel in. Phil Rucker is White House bureau chief for the Washington Post and a Pulitzer Prize winner. Jason Johnson, a politics editor at theroot.com. And we don't get to see him often. I'm thrilled he's here. David Jolly served as a Republican congressman from Florida. Phil, I want to go to you first. Walk me through the disconnect. Obama loved this guy as a doctor. President Trump did. A lot of us kind of scratched our heads when he gave that glowing review of the president's health and talked about his weight, which sounded much lower than what we thought. But he's got a great record. He then gets nominated for VA secretary, a position that loads of people have said he is simply not qualified for, a job that oversees 370,000 employees. But there's a big difference between not being qualified to be the VA secretary and the attacks that are going on, saying he's overprescribing drugs, banging on doors, drinking. Those are the kind of accusations that ruin a person's life.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Steph. And I think that's one of the reasons why Dr. Jackson is so determined to stick with this nomination process and have a chance to defend himself whenever he eventually has a confirmation hearing before the Senate. But there's clearly a disconnect between the really sterling reviews he received as a doctor at the White House. He treated President George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and now Donald Trump, and has had high marks from all of them, as well as from White House officials who worked with him in the West Wing. With the behavior that's been described, by these senators, describing the allegations that have come forward about him and about his conduct in office. That says nothing, by the way, of the management experience issue, which President Trump himself acknowledged yesterday, that there was an experience problem with Dr. Jackson. He's never managed an agency or a bureaucracy like this. I mean, Trump was drawn to him because of that news conference, because of the personal connection they had. He saw him as camera ready, somebody who could be sort of a cheerleader for veterans, get up there at the podium, hold his own in a press environment. Those are qualities that really matter to President Trump, as we know. He's a central casting kind of president when it comes to picking his cabinet, but these character traits are really problematic for Jackson right now.
Yes, we know that President Trump makes decisions based on his gut. But where's the team around the president, Jason, who says, hold on a second, this is what the vetting process looks like, here's what's involved in the job? Because I'm sure Ronny was thrilled and flattered when the president nominated him for it, and right now he's saying, why on earth did you do this to me? I mean, he's in the worst position of his life.
Right. You know, if he goes through with the process, then additional things come out. And look, this is the thing, Stephanie, I'm glad you said this. These are allegations, but these are heavy allegations. Like, it's one thing to say he was a jerk to work with. It's something, you can lose your medical license for overprescribing people. So I don't know.
And we need to be clear, when there's just a headline, overprescribing, we're talking about Ambien here.
Right.
When I worked in banking, every time we went on long trips, we went to the office doctor and got Ambien.
Right.
People joke and call it candy to fall asleep, but to call this guy the candy man, this could ruin his life's work, his reputation. He's a Navy officer.
Exactly. You could be court. There's so many different things that can happen. So again, it's another example of how this administration leaves people out to dry. They nominate people, or Trump nominates people based on whether he likes them or not, and then sort of leaves them to the wolves. His statement yesterday, well, I wouldn't want to go through it. Well, you put the guy in the position anyway. Why would you leave him there? So I hope that he does get a chance to testify. I hope there is a real investigation. I was concerned about this allegation of drunkenly knocking on someone's door. I mean, that sounds like sort of the John Bolton thing from 14, 15 years ago. But I hope he has a chance to defend himself, because that's what's so disturbing about this.
Should he be able to defend himself privately, right? When you put it when you isolate it and say he's banging down someone's door, that sounds awful.
Right.
But let me tell you, if I was on a work trip with my team and we all came back to the hotel, would I bang on Ali Velshi's door and say, pizza, let's get pizza? Maybe.
True.
So when you walk through this,
sure,
there's been lots of vetting issues.
Yeah.
Is the problem that President Trump wants to say there's obstructionists, they won't let my people through, or we're not respecting the process?
And it's probably a little bit of both, but to Jason's point, yesterday's statement by Donald Trump was a glimpse into his heart and soul. As soon as the heat turned up a little bit, he distanced himself. He put it all on Dr. Jackson and said, well, who knows? When the reality is, in your opener, it was Donald Trump who handpicked him. This is bigger now than protecting the nomination of Dr. Jackson. This is now about protecting his dignity. And the way to protect the dignity is for him to withdraw now and not go through this process. It's also a reflection of the poor qualifications of nominees. Stephanie, it was 3 months ago when we saw a judicial nominee of this administration admit they'd never been in a courtroom.
Yes.
Okay? That is probably the only nominee in Trump's tenure that did the right thing and withdrew, and he probably did it on his own to protect his own dignity. That's probably what Dr. Jackson should do in this case.
Okay, but withdrawing now, if he withdraws now, doesn't he lose his dignity? I mean, this guy is a 2-star rear admiral in the Navy. And the last headline that will be out there is, man, they said this guy was pushing drugs, they said he was drunk, and then he withdrew.
So one of two things happens. His nomination goes down, and that's an even worse indignity, or he does secure the nomination, but this follows him throughout his tenure. Nobody's talking about Tom Price now, because Tom Price did the right thing. Dr.
They're
Jackson
talking about Tom Price saying, man, he must be sitting in his house saying, how the heck does Scott Pruitt have his job and I'm out of his job?
That's right. No, and look, that's the pattern. Why is Scott Pruitt still on the job? This all goes to the top. You can't overlook the fact that the tone is set at the very top of the administration. The president who said, I'm going to hire the best people, frankly hasn't. He lets them dangle in the wind until he has somebody else fire them. This is a person of no accountability, the President of the United States. That's simple.
Phil, does this go back to sort of the chaos inside the White House? President Trump, and we've talked about it before, has never run a public business, has never had a board, has never been held accountable. And now he's angry that the press is doing fact-checking when the White House isn't doing the work. Where are the people in the White House who are... Where's John Kelly in this?
Well, Steph, this was a decision to nominate Ronny Jackson that Trump made himself, and he made it impulsively and in the moment. He sort of looked around. He had a problem with David Shulkin, who was the secretary of the VA. He wanted Shulkin out. He looked around. He saw Ronny Jackson, looks good in a uniform, is good at that press conference, is a good doctor to me, and picks him to be the VA secretary without any vetting process inside the West Wing. That's just not how presidents in the past have selected cabinet members. There's a reason there's a vetting process. These are major important executive positions. And it's also worth pointing out, Steph, that Trump is attacking these senators for doing their constitutional due diligence of oversight of the executive branch. I mean, this is a normal process in our government where when people are nominated to run cabinet agencies, they go before the Senate. There's a confirmation process. There's a vetting process in the Senate. Remember, Chuck Grassley at the Finance Committee would review people's taxes going back years for positions in the cabinet in the Obama administration. It's totally normal. There's nothing disgusting or abnormal or unfair about this.
it's normal to go through someone's history. The sad thing is that the VA, that the veterans, the 9 million veterans, could be the collateral damage here, and they are the people we should be caring about the most here. We've got to tighten up this process. Now we have to turn to the special election in Arizona's 8th district. NBC News has declared the Republican nominee, Debbie Lesko, the projected winner. Just